What's good, people? Time for another Magic Man review. Today, we've got a book. It's called After the Empire by Emmanuel Todd. And I was really looking forward to this book. Um, a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of Americans are really sick and tired of war and getting involved in all these wars all over the place and funding wars and all these little dirty tricks and dirtball stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Americans are really tired of it. And you'll see that if you look in the past, Americans have consistently voted against war. Almost all of them. The First World War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War. I think the only ones they were really gung-ho about was the Afghan War, because Americans have felt like they had been attacked. But all the other wars, Americans don't want any part of them. And the politicians, they run on that too. You'll see that Donald Trump, he ran to get us out of these wars. All these forever wars. It's the same thing with George W. Bush before him years ago. He says, we're going to stop nation building. This is just dumb. And as soon as they get in the office, they do a 180, and guess what? We're at war with somebody. So I was really looking forward to seeing what Mr. Todd had to say about, what's going to happen to America after we get all this stuff. We get this empire behind us. Americans really don't want to be an empire. I'm sure there are people on Wall Street in Washington that want America to be an empire, but that's not what your everyday standard American wants. We don't want that. It's not really part of our DNA. We want to be left alone, and we won't want any part of these wars or sticking our noses in other people's business, contrary to what many people believe. The book is dated, all right? It was written but at the time of the Second Gulf War, when America was getting ready to invade or had invaded Iraq. And so it doesn't stand the test of time, the stuff that he forecast in here, which was a really disappointment for me. I wanted to know what his projections were for what America of tomorrow is going to look like, but it's not like that. He had some good points in here, but he was really off on a lot of other stuff. He was making a point. He made a good point here, is that unchecked capitalism is really harmful, and he points out the deregulation period during the 80s, and that really hurt and set America back, especially when Clinton got in there and they put in a lot of the bank deregulation with the Glass-Steagall. They repealed that, and man, it's such a great time of all the deregulations, because those regulations were put into place during the Depression to stop, the average guy from getting screwed over. And they really got rid of them during the 80s and during the 90s. So he was really he was on point with that insight. He spends a good part of this book trying to prove Francis Fukuyama wrong. Some of you all don't know about Francis Fukuyama. He wrote this book about the end of history, about how liberal democracies had won the Cold War, and it's just smooth sailing from here on out. There's not going to be any problems. It's going to be, everybody's going to want to emulate the liberal democracies of the world. And Francis Fukuyama, it's been totally debunked. It's been dunked on. He spends a good time saying why he's wrong and why he's right. But he was more wrong when he was right. And so was Emmanuel Todd. The reason I got this book is because this is the guy, some of you don't know, predicted the end of the Soviet Union based on the birth rate statistics. Okay, and statistics can show you a lot of good things, but he really doesn't get really good on this book. Now, he was spot on about America deindustrializing, and Americans not really having the upper echelons of the establishment don't really have a monetary plan. They're just going at it, just making money like a pirate ship, just going around and just raping and robbing. That's what they do. That's what unchecked capitalism is. If you don't have any kind of checks on a capitalist. I mean, they would have slavery still in the United States if you had no check on capitalism. Because capitalism isn't really, unlike socialism, capitalism really doesn't have any morals. It's just get money in any way possible. No regulations, no oversight. That's pure capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism. All the hidden hand of the market's supposed to take care of all the moral stuff, which it doesn't. Okay, you have to have like an ethical background and regulations put on top of capitalism for it to be able to function right, to where you don't have pirate ships and slavery running amok. Okay. Now, some of the things I wrote down a lot of the things that he got wrong about this book. This book was written before the rise of China, and China is no part of this book. It's like, China, whatever, they're no good. This is dated. This is before China became an industrial powerhouse, because a lot of American and European and different industries moved to China because of the cheap labor. That's kind of gone away now. They're leveling up to where they're manufacturing really good stuff, and they're trying to clean up their environment, like the Western nations did when they industrialized. So they're not like the slave market they once were. Cheap labor, people jumping off of factories and things like that. But this book was written before that. This book was written during the War of Terror, okay, when it first kicked off, and a lot of things to be said about those times. A lot of Americans after 9/11, they wanted payback. Reason and logic just went out the window. They just wanted to go out and take care of business. And when we went into Iraq, that was one of the biggest mistakes that America ever made. And Germany and France at the time, they still had some agency. They were pushing back. And Americans were like, "Oh, you Frenchmen, you're a bunch of cheese-eating surrender monkeys." I'm like, these are the same people that sent their foreign legion to Afghanistan to fight alongside the Americans in Afghanistan. It kind of gives you have to look back at the mindset people had during that time. The Americans were pissed off. I mean, pissed off. If we had dropped nuclear weapons on Afghanistan, I would not have been shocked. There are a lot of people who's like, "Hey, listen, it's a quagmire. Don't even send the army into that place. We're going to get stuck in there for years and years and years. Just nuke them. Kill all of them." And that was a lot of the mindset of a lot of Americans during that time. And it's like when you flash red in front of a bull, logic and reason out the window. All he sees is red. He just wants to gore somebody. And that's how Americans were back then, right after 9/11. He wrote that the American oil reserves will be used up by 2010. Didn't happen. Still got plenty of oil. Maybe the fracking's kind of running out. I don't know. Maybe. Seem to be still have quite a bit of oil here in the United States and in Canada. I think there's still reserves up in Alaska that we haven't even touched yet. One of the funny things about this, in Europeans in general, Emmanuel Todd's a Frenchman, is they don't understand American militia groups and things like that, or where people we call bitter clingers, where Americans like to have guns and they like to be armed to the teeth and they don't trust the government. And at the same time, they'll point out how screwed up and corrupt our government it is. Like, come on, dude. If we both agree that the government is screwed up, twisted, and corrupt, and you think we shouldn't be armed? I mean, they're going all over the world. The American government sends the army, their armed forces all over the world, sticking guns in people's faces. You don't think they'll do that to us? They have. In the past, they have done so. And they'll do it again. So Americans, it's a different mentality. You really have to understand. You have to live here and be amongst Americans to understand it. Americans can be very independent-minded at sometimes. Sometimes they could be more collectivists and normies and conformies. We have plenty of them here. They usually vote for Democrat or Republican every time. But they just don't understand it. It's like, you're a bunch of right-wing kooks with your guns and your militias, but your government's screwed up. I'm like, dude, how do you think you get rid of a government? Just don't vote them away. If they own the ballot box, you're not voting them away. Okay, that's just the way it is. You're getting rid of the cartridge box. That's how you're getting rid of them. Okay. This book was also written before the Arab Spring, aka Color Revolution, and he talks about how the Europeans are dealing with their immigration situation so much better than the Americans do with theirs. Wrong. Doesn't stand up to the test of time. It really doesn't. The Europeans, this book was written when they still had an agency, when they weren't just straight up vassals of the United States. And I hate to, crap on Europeans, but y'all really don't have a voice, okay? You're going to do what Washington tells you to do. It's just the same way that a certain lobby tells the United States what to do, all right? You're owned. I'm not saying this because I don't like Europeans or anything like that, but we Americans don't have a voice in what happens in our system. Every time we vote for somebody who's going to, set things right, get the house in order, and sometimes they throw some red meat to the voters, but for the most time, after they get elected, they just do whatever they want to do. All right, so it doesn't matter if you vote. And Europeans, sometimes I don't understand them. Sometimes I do. They have more of a collectivist type of outlook on things, and they seem to have this really beef with Americans for some reason. I don't know why. It's like we don't have a beef with Europeans. Like, hey, the way you do things in France, the way things you do in England or Germany or Italy, Romania, hey, rock on with your bad self. It's your country. You do things how you want to do. And if I was a European, I would tell the Americans to get the hell out. I was like, don't ever come back here. Hey, thanks for the memories, the good times. We'll still trade with you and do stuff like that. You come over here on vacation, sip some wine, eat some snails, do whatever, get your rocks off. But you know what? You're not going to sit and tell us what to do. We have our own country. We have our own civilization. We have our own history. We don't need you Americans coming over here telling us what to do. That's what I would say if I was a European. But the thing is, they don't listen to y'all either. Your governments are bought and paid for. All right. So this was written at a time when the Europeans still had some agency. I think it was Sarkozy was in charge of France. I think Blair was in charge of England. And Angela Merkel was in charge of Germany. And they were tapping her phone calls. They were bugging her phone calls. That's how much, we respect the Germans. We bugged their phones. But that's kind of gone now. And I think Emmanuel Todd would be kind of like disappointed. And the way he's talking in this book is like, oh, we still have some agency. All right? No, sorry, bro. And it's kind of sad, Nobody wants to be like this glob of, Walmarts and Burger Kings everywhere. Nothing against Walmart or Burger King, but, it's nice to have that hometown feeling, the authenticity, right? Now, he was talking about the future in here when he's talking about how America will be in the future and how Europeans need to be in the future and how they are to some extent, France especially. France is a little bit different from all the other European powers, and they still have a little bit of what I would call a Gaullism left in them, where they're independent like de Gaulle wanted to be, because de Gaulle pulled France out of NATO. If y'all don't remember that, he wanted an independent France. France has its own nuclear weapons too, not many of them, but enough to do the job if somebody messes with them. But he was talking about a neo-protectionist and an economy and an education and schooling system that favors laborers and engineers. And that's what America needs. We really, really need that. We don't need any more lawyers. We're just chocked. We're just stacked up to the rim with lawyers. We don't need any more lawyers. It's the last thing we need. We don't need any gangsters. We don't need lawyers. We need engineers. We need laborers. We need skilled tradesmen. And we're kind of moving towards that right now. A lot of the guys I worked with when I was cutting steel, they didn't want to go to college. They wanted to learn how to cut steel. They wanted to learn how to use a ruler, how to work a crane, how to drive stuff on the truck, how to use a forklift, how to use a blowtorch, how to read schematics, stuff like that, how to use a saw, how to use a press machine. They wanted to know stuff that produced real and tangible goods. Not an algorithm, not an app, not some fugazi up in the sky, the cloud. They wanted to do real stuff. And that's really, I've seen that with the younger generation. It kind of makes me happy because a lot of people from my generation are like, college. You need to go to college, because you don't want to swing a hammer for the rest of your life. Well, it turns out now, you can make some good money swinging a hammer. A pipe wrench, you know how to work a blowtorch. You can make some good money. And those jobs are in demand. Truckers, those jobs are in demand. They're paying good money too. So, a ray of sunshine in there. Okay, you gotta keep things positive. And he also made a prediction about there would be no more totalitarian or national socialism in Europe or elsewhere, and he didn't foresee China. He didn't foresee it. All right, and he missed it. Bada bing, bada boom. Hey, it's a pretty decent book, but it's dated. You're not really going to get any kind of good information in there. You're just going to read the stuff. It's like, oh, he was kind of on point. And the most part, he's like, he was really wrong. And he really glosses over European accountability. A lot of the stuff Americans get accused of, or our government, not us, just our government, the powers that be, the people that go to eyes wide shut parties, those Americans, they get accused of, is the same stuff that those Europeans did and are doing. Okay? Look at France's involvement in Africa, in the Sahel region, and how they were robbing those Africans blind. They just recently got kicked out of there. The Africans didn't even have their own currency. They were supposed to use a French type of currency. They were screwing over the Africans with inflation. So a lot of times when Europeans throw shade at America, it's like, it's projection. It's like, you're doing the same thing. And who do you think we learned it from? But humans are human. I'm not trying to throw shade upon Americans are great, Europeans are good, Chinese are awesome, Russians are I'm not throwing any shade. If you watch this channel, you'll know humans are going to human. They're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. Some good, some bad. But at the end of the day, humans are human. They're going to do human stuff. All right. Doesn't matter what nationality it is or what religion or skin color. Humans, gotta give them a break sometimes. It was a decent book, not what I was expecting. Did not talk about what's going to happen to America after the empire. It's like, oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be shoots and ladders and, rainbow bright, rainbow farts. Nah, not that kind of book. It was decent though. It was okay. I wouldn't recommend it though. After the Empire by Emmanuel Todd. Remember, if you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps me out with the algorithms. Until next time, people.